Now into the reason that the episode was made today,
Yeah.
TAPPS Division One preview. We are going to start with District 1, otherwise known as the North Division, otherwise known as the division that has run things since time began. So obviously, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams in D1. We're going to start with, I guess this is alphabetical, probably is, Bishop Lynch. So Bishop Lynch, last year, average year more or less, little bit tough. They lose rising junior quarterback, Legend
Legend
Howell.
Howell. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe I almost blanked on Legend's name. Legend Howell goes to DeSoto. However, they have returning productions such as senior receiver Ty Bradley, junior tight end Ishmael Muhammad, senior linebacker Will Estes, junior offensive lineman Diego Chavez, and junior quarterback Marias Leon. Walker,
Yes.
it's going to be interesting. We talked to several people close to the program. They like the spot the program's at, despite Legend Howell leaving for DeSoto. Any overall high-level thoughts on Bishop Lynch?
I think it's also not only him. I think replacing God's will be a big piece of that offense that they have to replace. He was a monster last year. But overall, I think the team is always going to be good. Bishop Lynch is always a program that will fight tooth and nail every single game they're at, and it's going to be interesting to see how different this offense looks. I saw on the guys' story the other day there was supposedly a quarterback battle with Matthias and someone else at Lynch. I don't because he was talking about quarterback battles or whatever. And so there might be a quarterback battle there. Don't really know much about it. I haven't really checked in on that and see if it's actually true. But it's gonna be interesting to see how that plans out because even though you know, not a quarterback's not everything, but a guy who's been a 2-year starter since he was a freshman and would have been a 4-year starter, that's a big replacement to ask. So you have to get a guy who knows the offense and all of this. And I think Brandon Modes, Sublet, and the whole coaching staff is going to have that team ready to go. But whoever has that quarterback, whoever does, is the gunslinger for that team, they have two of the best weapons in all of TXPS in Ishmael and Ty Bradley to throw to. There's going to be good conversations that I will probably have on in TXPS about Ishmael Muhammad being one of the best athletes in TXPS this year. That kid is a freak of nature, and there's a recent Pitt has already offered. He's gonna be a big time player for the Friars.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I think we're going to more or less know how the season's going to go for Lynch by the second and fifth week. Week 2, they play Midland Christian in Midland. So that'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how they stack up against a top level Division 2 team. And then more than anything, the week before district, September the 20th, they played Dallas Christian at home. DC dog walked them last year. I was at that game. There was never really a point that it was close. God's will played really, really well, and that was about the only thing that went right. I remember specifically thinking Lynch's offense looks like a TAPPS Division 1 offense, and their defense looked like a 6-man defense. I mean, it was really, really rough. I think we will know whenever they play Dallas Christian if they compete. They're going to be ready to compete in D1, and if they get dog walked, again, DC could beat most teams in D1, but if they get dog walked, it's probably going to be a long year. Ryan Schroeder, Bishop Lynch preview. Any thoughts, comments, concerns?
No, I think I'll hit it right on the head for sure. I'm excited to see what Ishmael can do. I know that's definitely we'll definitely see more offers pile in the rest of this year as well. And yeah, if there's a QB battle there, I don't know the full extent of that, but no, I'm excited to see what they do. Obviously, this is a really, really hard district, as well as the team we're about to mention, my alma mater, is going to have to face, coming up to Bishop Lynch not coming up, but Frisco Legacy coming up to this district and stuff. Like this is going to be an extremely hard district, as if it wasn't already. And I know Bishop Lynch has been through the ringer a couple times with the teams they've been having to play. I'm interested to see if they can kind of bounce back after Legend and Godswill leaving.
Yeah, no, those are the two big questions. I can't believe Walker had to remind me about God's will. One of my favorite players last year, just an absolute bowling ball of, what did I call DC? The rolling ball of chainsaws. That basically
Yeah,
applied
rolling ball
to
and
God's
chainsaw.
will. That applied to. I need to figure out a new DC adjective this year. That'll come to me at some point. But yeah, I mean, they have the weapons. I love Coach Sublet and Coach Moats over there. again, they'll figure out a way. It's just they got to figure it out quick because there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in non-district to kind of mess around and find your
Right.
identity. So
Right.
we'll know pretty quickly. Moving on into the second team that we have, a new addition moving up from Division II, we have Ryan's alma mater, Legacy Christian out of Frisco. Walker, do you get upset when, Ryan, do you get upset whenever we call them Frisco Legacy Christian? Like I get upset
No,
if it's Tyler Grace?
I think we've talked about this forever. There's too many like legacies in the world and stuff like that. I mean, there's high level legacy schools in the state of Texas and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think the city indication is fine. I know you hate Tyler Grace for some reason. Yeah, and then I think Fort Worth Southwest Christian is correct, but yeah,
I
I
don't
guess
think. Well, again, we've had this discussion probably 4 times. Walker, do
yeah,
you take offense to Fort Worth
I think
Southwest
he
Christian?
does.
Let,
I
let
think
me
he
let
does.
me rephrase this. If somebody calls it Fort Worth Southwest Christian, do you immediately know they really don't know anything about the program?
Fort Worth
No,
Southwest, Fort Worth Southwest Christian is fine. Fort Worth Southwest is what gets me. Like, just
Okay.
think of the school. Just our name is Southwest Christian. No one.
So that makes sense. Let me rephrase.
yeah,
It's
Tyler Grace
not that I
community.
don't get me wrong. Exactly. Don't get me wrong. I don't like Tyler Grace. It's not that I hate it so much. It's that if you say Tyler Grace, you kind of immediately tip your hand. You don't know anything about the program because nobody that knows Grace calls it Tyler Grace.
Right.
Let me rephrase that. Nobody in East Texas that knows Grace calls it Tyler Grace. I guess that's because they don't have to distinguish between Grace Prep and Tyler Grace. Somehow I commandeered this like 20 minutes in and made it a Grace podcast. Anyways, Frisco Legacy Christian last year 10-2. They were first in TAPPS Division II District 2. Probably the greatest comeback story
Of course.
from 2 years ago to last year. Doug Hicks just inheriting the exact same team with I think the word was no transfers. And taking them all the way to what I think was, it was the state quarterfinals where they fell against All Saints, which I mean, no shame there. All Saints was a fantastic team. I went out there in the spring. I had a great time talking to Coach Hicks and Coach Mackey, great dudes. I said to them and several of their players, if I was a high school player, I would want to play for those two guys. I think they've got a great program featuring athletes such as senior quarterback Ian Pulte, junior linebacker Sam Jones, senior defensive lineman Marshall Tucker, a transfer from Prestonwood, who I did not know was there until I got there in the spring. Huge get for Legacy Christian. Senior running back Henry Ubolo Jr. I've covered Henry before. I still, for some reason, need to figure out how to say his last name. Junior athlete Jackson Ladd and the rising sophomore athlete superstar Corian Gray. So, like I mentioned, I'm very high on Legacy. Moving up to this district is going to be tough. We'll get into our district rankings later in the episode. If they were staying in D2, especially in the district they were in last year, they'd be a lock for first, in my opinion. However, when you're in a district with Liberty Christian and Parish and Prestonwood, things are a little bit dicey. Walker, any high-level outlooks on Legacy moving into 2024?
I think they're the most out of the big names in TAPPS Division 1. I think they're the most well-rounded of a team, if that makes sense. Like, they're not Parish, but they're not a bad team whatsoever. And I think what that coaching staff has finally brought is stability, which is a massive thing that program needed. And so I think having that will help benefit this school, and it will show them the right direction of how to build a program. So I'm very excited for this team. All I know is Wes told me pretty much every week after watching Legacy, being like, Ian Pulte is the real deal. This team is going to be really good. I'm excited for this kid. So I'll take Wes's word for it. I'm really excited about this team. And with him leading the helm, I think it's going to be a good team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll reiterate that. Pulte's ability to throw on the run almost impresses me more than anything. And I never like classifying quarterbacks as like scramblers or pocket passers, because I think even at the high school level, it's kind of BS. You're putting a limitation on them. Pulte can do anything, but that's the main thing I took away. That dude he has an innate ability to recognize pressure, get away from it, and make a great throw to great athletes in the midst of everything. Really, really high on him. Ryan Schroeder, looking back on it, I probably should have led with you considering this is your alma mater. I apologize for not doing so, but your alma mater did pretty daggone good last year and looks like they're primed to actually compete in probably the hardest district, not probably the hardest district in the land. Your thoughts on the Eagles?
I think it's pretty obvious to mention. Yeah, it's like that is the hardest district and stuff. So I probably won't hit on that as much as we'll hit on that the rest of the time. But I just want to talk about the fact that Coach Hicks came in here and basically like he deserves the most credit for that, right? Like you went into there kind of a situation that was not great at the moment or at that moment. Like, you know, from a legacy, perspective and stuff, they were going through a lot of hardships about who was going to be the next coach over time with, with what happened the previous season. And for Coach Hicks to come in there and take every single guy that was on that roster and produce what they produced was incredible. A couple coaches have been there for a while. I know Coach Mackey was probably one of the only other ones that's been here for a minute, but Coach Hardage is the only one assistant that's been there for, I think since like, I'm gonna say over 8 years, something like that. I mean, he's probably the one that's probably been there, or not 5 years. I was in high school. Probably over 8 to 10 years, this Coach Hardis has been on this coaching staff, and he's probably the only one that's been there this entire time. This coaching staff has evolved and changed over and over and over again at Legacy. And for Coach Hicks to be the one to come in and basically, prove that they could go 10-2 with the players they had and not bring in an insane amount of kids from outside is insane. I mean, the number one thing about Frisco Legacy that you would think is that there's 12 public schools in the area, right? Like theoretically speaking, if these 12 kids from these schools couldn't find somewhere to play, or these out of these 12 schools, if there's kids that couldn't find playing time, you would think they would come to Legacy. But instead, the only transfer you see incoming right now is another private school kid, kind of down the street. But theoretically, they've produced everything from a legacy basis growing up and not having to grab these new kids, which is the problem everyone said they had was, well, legacy kids are legacy kids. They're not going to win games and stuff like that. That's not true. Clearly, Coach Hicks has switched the narrative, and we'll see what happens this year. It's a really tough district, like we mentioned, but it's everything he did last year proves exactly what they did right. And there's no telling what they could do this year. They could be a team that goes, middle of the road, 5-5, or they could be a team that goes and ends up being one of the better teams in the district, depending on what happens. So I'm excited to see what happens with Legacy this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to reiterate because again, whenever we get into like transfers and recruiting, like whenever I say that we credit Doug Hicks so much for winning without transfers, it's not an indictment on people that get transfers in. It's just saying that whenever you inherit the exact same roster that got dog walked 2 years ago and go and win a district championship and make it to the quarterfinals with the same kids, there's only one variable in that equation that's changing. That's the coaching. And then everything trickles down from that. I mean, it's incredibly impressive. You got to tip your cap. And I'm very, very excited to see how they perform in just an absolute dog eat dog district. It'll be a fun time.
I was just gonna say 2-8 in 22-23 season to 10-2 the next season. Just think about that in some perspective. That's insane. So
I remember very vividly in 2022, whenever Grace was just beating the dog out of Legacy, just clowning Ryan in the group chat whenever it was happening, which was a cheap shot on my end because everyone knew what was going to happen that game. If you haven't figured out, I like to take cheap shots and gloat a little bit when I can. And then last year, Grace got its comeuppance and lost to Legacy, and that's when I was like, Legacy's really good.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They're still really good.
I wish you would have had to wear a cheerleader costume. And I think it would have been even at that point. But there's still some Halloween episode out there where I'm wearing a cheerleader costume in my junior year or sophomore year house, or whatever. So that's neither here nor there. But,
oh my gosh! So remind me, because I forget. Was that bet? Did Grace have to win that straight up or beat the spread for that to happen?
No, I mean, I think I was a man and I took it as a straight up bet and knowing that it was probably not going to happen. But
that was a very mean and unfair
bet. And then you gave me a hard time about not finding a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader outfit, and I found a good one. All right, so don't give me a hard time. All right, I'm back to wear more cheerleader outfits come Halloween. All right, gosh,
we might have not been able to put that on YouTube had that gone through.
That's funny.
We might have gotten you on that Netflix documentary or something.
But no, no.
We're back, baby. We're back. TXPS is back in full force. Moving on.
That's funny.
I mentioned it. Go on, Walker.
I have a report.
Go away.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go away.
I was scrolling through Twitter while y'all were talking about cheerleading, weirdly enough. Supposedly, per some account on Twitter, Quinn Murphy will be recommitting the second week of August. So look on the lookout for that. And if I had to put my money on it, just through his Twitter, I would expect to see him at the school down in Waco.
That would be fantastic. I have ripped on Waco a lot, but the more I go, and because my sister went to college there, Waco's a quaint. If you stay in the center of Waco, it's a nice place. I don't really, again, I don't want to segue too much, but Quinn Murphy, another kid that I feel like we have known since he was a squirt. Like he was a freshman in high school and he was like this tall, and I met him at 7-on-7 again. He's 2 inches taller than me. Going to be a great player. And Walker, that offers a perfect segue into another dog eat dog team, Liberty Christian. And before I get into this, I should have said this at the very top. We got to give a huge shout out to Texas Private School Football Guy. A lot of our previews are based on material he publishes. He publishes some of the most in-depth reviews on teams, preseason, midseason, postseason. Huge shout out to him. Really makes it easy for us to do these preview episodes. But Liberty Christian, it really needs no introduction, but I'll give you anyways. 14-0 last season, Division II state champs. No games were even very close. Just an absolute fire squad of talent. Biggest transfer this season was from the team they beat in state championships. Class of 26 quarterback Quinn Murphy. Offered by every team under the sun. Like Walker said, will be committing soon. Fantastic athlete. In terms of offensive weapons, could mention the entire team. We're not going to because it'd take too long, but here's who we have. Senior athlete Brady Janusek, the OU baseball commit. Senior wide receiver Quentin Brown, the Boise State commit. Probably the fastest human being I've ever seen live in Texas high school football.
Man, what did he run? 4.25?
Yeah, something like that. You sent me the video, and Walker sent the video of Quinn running that, and he said, "Is this actually a 4.25?" Because anytime you're like under 4.4, you have to question it. And I saw it, and it was fast. And my response was, "I don't know, but I know he's the fastest person I've ever seen live in TXPS." And he's not just that, Texas high school football. Going to be electric to watch. Speaking of electric, senior wide receiver Jalen Hawkins, Louisiana Tech commit, kind of almost gets a little bit overshadowed on this team. He plays anywhere else, he'd be wide receiver one. He is such a fantastic athlete as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of fantastic athletes, go on.
San Diego State, not LA Tech. My apologies.
San Diego State, my fault. San Diego State, and then also electric athlete, senior running back Chase Garnett, the USF commit. Oh, that's my NCAA dynasty team. Hopefully, I'll be able to play with them next year. But yeah, obviously, all elite athletes. I'll get into that in a second. In terms of defense, we got senior linebacker CJ Witten, senior defensive back Nick Blevins, senior defensive lineman / linebacker Maddox Sakiri, junior Jet Hare, junior Cade Violi, sophomore Cooper Witten will play both sides of the ball this year, has really started to garner national attention in the offseason with his Oklahoma offer. I think Kansas and Missouri have also offered. Another guy, got a shout out Hogan Nelson for putting us on to him. He mentioned that, hey, Witten's got a younger son that might be even more electric than anyone we've seen so far. And Hogan Nelson was right. In terms of the offensive line, we've got senior Keithan Smith, senior Nathan Humphreys, and then junior offensive lineman transfer Austin Brandlow, who, my God, I think he is like 6'8" or 6'9", 330, 340 pounds. I got his Twitter somewhere I can verify. I saw that man in the spring, and I thought he was Goliath. He is gigantic. That was, and I was talking to Witten afterwards, which is, number one, cool to be able to just chop it up with Jason Witten. But also, we were talking about transfers, and I was like, dude, I think y'all got enough. Like, I think y'all are going to be really good in terms of talent. He's like, we can get some more work on the O-line. I was like, oh, he's about to go bring in some dogs, and Austin Brandlow is one of them. So, again, I just talked for entirely too long previewing that. Walker Lott, good. They're going to be good.
Dude, like you said, they're gonna be fine, and they were fine last year. But like, what's even crazier is like they just get older and more mature, and that's gonna be more powerful for them than probably bringing any cat in, because they have
don't lose anyone.
They have the dudes.
Yeah, that's insane.
They have the dudes to win a championship, and they just get older and more cohesive, and that's what's more scarier than anything. And you give a guy like Quinn Murphy or Carter Len, who also came in from Southlake, you give one of them that receiving core with that running back. I mean, and you give them, you had Nathan Humphrey and the other offensive lineman on Keith Smith, and you're like, well, that's 2 6'5" guys that's good enough to protect a quarterback. Well, no, you want to bring in another 6'7" guy on the other side. That's like, they know their weaknesses, which was offensive line, also losing Antonio Simone to graduation. They're like, we need to replace at least one guy. They replace it with him. So it's like, they knew their weakness. They added that one piece, but everyone else, they just got better together. And it's ridiculous. And I saw somewhere, I sent it to US, where my good friend Jason Howell was over there for their picture day, and they were talking about with Chase Garnett. He was like, I want to run for like 40 touchdowns and like 2,000 yards. And I said it to Wes. I was like, he'll probably do it. And he's like, he doesn't even need to, but like, yeah, he can. Like that's the type of dudes they have around him, and it's very very impressive. And there's not a better team in private school last year, and sneak peek, there might not be a better team in private school this year.
I think so. We'll see when we get to the rankings. I will say exactly what I said when you sent me that. When yeah, he says I want to get around 2,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. And you said that's a lot of yards. My exact response was, and Chase, you can use this as motivation. I said, I honestly don't think that's possible with the receiving core they have, because to get that, you'd almost have to give it to him every play. But I also said, but as an individual in a vacuum, he's more than capable of it. So it'll just come down to, how does Liberty want to win, through the air or through the ground this year? It's going to be interesting.
Yep.
Ryan Schroeder, this is, I can definitively say, the best team I've ever seen in TXPS, and I'm glad to say it's better than the Dion teams, because I hate Dion. So your thoughts on Liberty Christian this year?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start with that. I think Parish 22 is always the thing I'll always compare it to, right? Parish 22 is the #1 team we have ever seen in person before this, by the way. Parish 22 is an incredible team. I think without Quinn, this team is in a nutshell probably one of the best teams and stuff. And then you add Quinn in and you add Austin Branlow, and this team becomes a lot better in every aspect as well. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, I've seen Brady Janusek, I think 2 or 3 times in person now at this point, and Brady Janusek alone is one of the best players I've ever seen in TXPS. You mix that with a guy like Quinn, who I think I've seen one time maybe, and I thought he was pretty good. A guy that runs a 4.25 laser or whatever what we thought he did, and then you mix that with whatever they're bringing in. I mean, this team has the capability to being, yeah, like you said, one of the best teams we've ever seen of all time. I think it's funny that Chase is like so sure of himself that that he thinks he's gonna get that and stuff. It's like,
Because if they give him the ball,
yeah, if you get the ball, that will happen, but you may not get the ball because theoretically
there's
speaking,
14 other guys they have to get the ball to.
Jalen Hawkins is the third option on the wide receiving core. He would be a #1 option most places in TAPPS, if not all of them. And I think that's crazy to think about in some varieties. Is like, this team is a super team, and we'll see. I think we'll get to it later. Parish is obviously the other team that would be in this equation, but from an overall standpoint, Parish 2022 and the TCCH team that Wes had to go against. I would say those are probably the only two comparable teams on paper to this team. Injuries, all that kind of stuff could happen throughout the year, but theoretically, that is on paper the only team we could see that is comparable to this.
Yeah, and I said all through last year, I probably said it to 10 different people, last year's Liberty team would beat Dion's TCCH teams by 2 touchdowns, point blank period. It's just because they're even better athletically, in my opinion. And from a discipline standpoint, it is night and day. That TCCH team that Liberty team was a well-oiled machine, and TCCH was just, they scared everyone so bad everyone forgot how to play football. I mean, that Liberty team is so good, and they're even better this year, which is absolutely insane. But again, we're gonna get going.
I was gonna say, the only thing to always mention back to this is the amount of teams that Parish 2022 beat from a public school perspective is the thing that you always have to think about. If you look at who they beat from a public school perspective, that always gives them the credibility that they deserve. They were within 1 touchdown of SOC. Is that correct?
A field goal of SOC.
A field goal of SOC. And SOC has won ever since then, basically. So just in a nutshell, I think that speaks volumes, and we'll see what it comes from the Liberty team this year.
I really want to offer non-district schedule from Liberty. I really want to.
I know that was disappointing.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Is it kind of like
it's private school teams. I wanted the 5A schools.
The game one is against Fort Bend. Don't get me wrong, Fort Bend's a great team, but like, I wanted to see like the Parish, like Sauk, China Spring, LBJ, Aledo. God, what I would give to see Liberty play Aledo or Sauk, dude, that would be nuts. But again, I know we're gonna get accused of glazing or whatever the kids say now because we spent like 20 minutes on Liberty Christian. But I mean, if any team besides Parish deserves it, it's them. It's insane. But moving on to from the penthouse to the outhouse last year, Nolan Catholic. And again, not saying it's going to happen this year, but last year they did go 0-11, 0-4. They were dead last in District 1, Division 1. But we might be a little higher on them this year than last year. They're, in terms of guys they've got senior quarterback Carter Devereaux, who looks the part, looks great at 7-on-7, physically looks strong. I think he can be a great player. Then we've got junior wide receiver Jake Werline, junior wide receiver Aaron Morales, junior linebacker William Terry, senior offensive lineman Brendan O'Connor, and senior DB JD Maddox. So, Walker, it's interesting because obviously there's really nowhere to go but up for Nolan from last year.
Yeah.
Overall thoughts on Nolan, because I'm high on Devereaux.
Coach Maddox over there has an impossible task to take a team. We said it last year too. Like, take a team that was buried, like, for almost all the stuff they had to deal with, just like probably administration wise behind the scenes. I have no like record of this, but probably having to be like, hey, we can't give you what the previous coaching staff had, being real, because they can't. And so he has to fight an uphill battle. And I think this is going to be a battle where they're going to shock a couple people here and there. I'm not going to say they're going to win the state championship, but I think it's a solid team where they have a young talent that is going to get better just with age. And a lot of those 26s that they have are just going to get better this year as juniors. And I think we're big fans of Carter Devereaux here. I think he's a great player, and I think he can win him a couple games if needed. So I think this team is going to win a couple games. Where they're going to place in district, you're going to find out later, but I think it's a good team that's rising, and it's going to take a lot for that team to get back to what they were once upon a time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think anyone is going to sit here and tell you that that Nolan's going to be like whenever they were under Bowden, because I don't think even people at Nolan would want that back, considering how that ended in a dumpster fire. But I mean, again, nowhere to go but up. We like the guys they have there. It's just a question of, have these young guys gotten better with the year? Like we said with Liberty, that's kind of the biggest thing with Liberty for us right now. It's not guys they brought in, although they're good. It's all of the talent is a year older. A lot of Nolan's talent is a year older. Are they now a year better? We'll see. We just have to see how they fare under this administration. Ryan Schroeder, obviously not the Nolan Catholic of old, but hopefully they can take a step back in that direction this year. Any overarching thoughts on the Vikings?
Yeah, I just think about Coach Maddox in total, about where he's been, and he knows the private school landscape from a perspective. Like, I think other coaches that have moved around, don't know it as well as, if y'all didn't know, obviously Coach Maddox was at Trinity Valley for 17 years, from all the way from 2004 all the way to 2021. And then he was at Oak Ridge for 2 years, right before this new job and stuff, right? Like, in some aspect or another, he's been in the private school landscape. He knows how things work and stuff, whether that be SPC or whether that be, TAPPS. And, he's really deserving of this job at, at Nolan Catholic. When we talked to him in person at TAPPSCon, I was really, really high on, the way he spoke about his team, spoke about his players, spoke about the guys, spoke about the administration. He was very positive about everything. And so I think for him, with the right attitude and kind of just like, bringing this team back together to see what they could be, I'm really high on Coach Maddox in this whole process.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm looking at their non-district schedule, and it's Grace Prep, Bishop Dunn, Holy Cross, and SCS. I mean, they, in my opinion, have got to win. They got to win 2 of those games. You get swept in that non-district slate, or even go 1-4, and it's going to be some tough sledding in district. I'm not going to say who they need to beat. They just need to win 2 out of those 4 games. But it'll be interesting. Say it again.
They can't beat one of them. That's all. Out of those 4, they just can't beat one of them. But
that might be an interesting game. That might be interesting.
Hey.
But we will see. I mean, again, nowhere to go but up for Nolan this year. I really do hope they take a step forward, because it's better when everyone's more or less competitive. But speaking of competitive and not more or less, the Parish Episcopal Panthers, they went 10-3 in 2023, 4-0 in district, and obviously state champions, defeating Houston St. Thomas in Waco in December. All right, get ready, folks. Got a lot of prospects to list off. We have senior quarterback Sawyer Anderson, the Purdue commit, 4-year starter, probably the treasure trove of offensive knowledge he's gained from Novikov in 4 years starting under that offense is probably break my brain to have a fraction of it. He's going to be fantastic. The receiving core, four absolute dogs: Jalen Pyle, Bryson Fields, Carlson Darby, and Beckham Smith. I mean, obviously, we know a lot about Pyle, Fields, and Darby. I'm still super, super high on Beckham Smith. By the way, yeah, three of these guys are seniors. One is going to be a junior. That's Jalen Pyle. Really high on Beckham Smith, like I mentioned. Saw him perform very well in multiple games last year. Really excited to see how he performs this year. Then we have senior defensive lineman Landry Sadler, junior linebacker Jesse Richardson, junior defensive back Juju Mayfield, senior defensive back DC Crane, whose testing numbers in the weight room are just absolutely insane. That dude is a ball of muscle. We've got senior defensive back Nick Wheeler, the transfer from ESD, which will make a big impact on this Panthers team. We have a revamp of the offensive line, which needed to happen after graduating that stud class. We've got junior Gavin Lavelle, 6'4", 270. We've got sophomore Sean Weinzadel. It's close enough. It's as close as I'm going to get, Walker.
We'll learn.
6'3", 285. We've got junior from John Paul II, Andrew Lockie, 6'2", 295. And then Jonathan Major and Preston Ward. And the last guys, I'm running out of breath. We have senior edge Landon Pratt, 6'5", 253.
Yeah.
So reading out all those numbers, it means they're tall. It means they can move some weight. Walker Lott, they've got a lot of guys, like we mentioned, with other teams that are a year older and a year wiser, and also some really valuable transfers. Where do you see Parish moving into the 2024 season?
No, they have the weapons. They always do. And I think, especially last year, we forget how good Jalen Pyle will be. Jalen Pyle will be a menace to society this year in TAPPS Division 1. He had just other guys around him that were just going to make other plays, you know? And so those guys are now, like Hutch Groves graduated, so it's going to be basically his receiving core to demolish. And Bryson Fields and him and Darby, it's going to be a scary sight. But with every other Parish team, the Parish team relies and runs through the offensive line. They were not able to do the things last year in the past couple of years without our offensive line being what it is. And so this was a big thing for them to redevelop it. And the one good thing about the offensive line for the past couple of years is that they were together. They were cohesive. They knew probably every single thing about each other, and they would have to just replace one guy or two. This is going to be different. This is a whole new ball game where they've had a summer and now starting about to be an off season to kind of figure out how they gel. And it's going to be interesting to see how fast they click and if they already do once the season starts. That's going to be hard to do, but once you get into October, when Liberty comes around and you have the guys that you're not going to want to face, those guys have to be cohesive, and that's going to be a true testament to see how good this Parish team can be. Do we still think they're the number 2 team in private school this year? Absolutely. But facing Liberty where they're cohesive, it's going to be interesting to see how the offensive line will handle that. But they have the size and they have the talent to do it. So it's going to be interesting to watch. And also, a big question is going to be their running back spot. They don't have a true standout running back for the first time in a while. I could see maybe DC Crane playing both sides of the ball, maybe playing that running back spot, maybe. I don't really know who will be that chosen guy. So it's going to be interesting to watch who. They've always had a fantastic running back. And it's going to be interesting to see who is going to be that guy this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do want to at least say that we probably tipped our hands in saying that we think that Liberty is going to be the best team in D1 this year. And I think there's going to be a few people that are going to come out and say that they're going to dog walk Parish. I really want to pump the brakes on all of that. Liberty, and I've said it, I think this year's team might be the best team we've ever seen in private school. Parish has won 5 straight state championships.
Yeah.
This is not a team that gets dog walked by private school teams. Yes, I personally do think they're outmatched from a talent standpoint. If you put it all on paper, I think you're almost crazy to say that they're not.
Yeah.
Well, I say that I'm looking at Parish's roster, and it's almost even.
Yeah.
So all that to say is, anyone that tells you that Parish is going to get dog walked, it's suspect. I really do think that's going to be a competitive game when it comes around. Ryan Schroeder, sorry, Walker, go on.
I just want to say one thing. That Nick Blevins versus Jalen Pyle one-on-one matchup during the game in October, must watch television. Gonna be awesome.
That'll be fantastic. Ryan Schroeder, I'm going to run to the restroom really quickly and let you drone on about Parish. Please make it longer than like 45 seconds.
No, seriously, I think the number one thing I like to talk about with parish wise is our relationship with Novikov over the years, the way we've been able to see him grow teams, grow players, go to the next level. Me and Walker can speak exactly for what we heard at TAPPS from him. He's at the recruiting mind for sure when it comes to like guys going on to the next level. When I say that, and you go to his Twitter and stuff like that. I mean, the amount of times where what he said at TAPPSCon is true on his Twitter. He's retweeting every single one of his players that is getting an offer, a visit, a whatever. Like he is of that mindset of he's going to push guys to the college level, whether that be, going to school there or whatever. I mean, we've heard some stories over time of guys stop playing football and doing school at places and stuff, and they've gone to great schools and all that. So there's just a lot of things that we know about Coach Novikov and what he's been able to do for these athletes. And once again, he's brought in a bunch of good guys from the O-line perspective, and otherwise, this team has been great for a variety of aspects over the years. And we've talked about how he has had some of the best private school teams of all time in his own shell, I'd say. But, you talk about this year, right? And, people talk about, they're probably one of the, on the lower side of teams that Novikov has ever had. And I'll list off their non-district schedule. The first they have All Saints. Second, they have Episcopal. Third, they have Cornerstone, and fourth, that relationship that Novikov has. They have a game at LBJ Austin. So they're going back there again. And I think that just kind of speaks to you think about the fact that I'm having a lower tier team in the mind of Parish. Parish having a lower tier team is literally this team, which is still
That's
incredible.
the top team for almost any team in TAPPS ever.
Keep that in mind, by the way. But Novikov still feels like he wants to keep their relationship with these public schools, at least scheduling at least LBJ, and he's still scheduled an SBC Episcopal, and all that. And he scheduled the teams that most people are scared to schedule. Whether that be, Liberty is not scared to schedule them. I don't want to say that, right? But in some variety or some way, it probably just didn't come up with all the other things happening that they were going to schedule public school teams. And you have to give Novikov credit, even with the lower tier team from his perspective. He still wants to have these guys play on the higher stages like LBJ September 20th. But with all that being said, I agree with y'all about everything you said about the athletes from that perspective. And I think this team is, number two. And it's not, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, is it 1A, 1B? We'll get to it later, but I'm pretty definitively feel like this is what's called. This is not a 1A, 1B situation anymore at this point, in my opinion. So that is what I think. So
I'll leave with this too. Then we can move on to the next team because this has gone on for a while. I've realized
it's fair.
It's fair.
Daniel Novikov does not lose. He does not lose. He will find a way to beat any team he comes up against. Has he lost in the past? Yeah. But it's rare. It is very, very rare. So take that if you put that in your mind and when the season comes about, because no matter the team he gets, that man will find a way to win games.
100%.
Yeah, no, and I like how we're saying this. Like, we're not saying that like mentioned, like last year, Parish's team was a little bit down and they won their 5th straight state championship. We're saying that because the bar at Parish, it's through the skyline. Like, I don't even know how high it could be. It's at the moon, for God's sake. I mean, they're so talented and the bar is so high. They've almost set unrealistic expectations for themselves. And I think that they have a chance to surpass that this year. The flip side of looking at this is, before we move on, is last thing I'll say, is what a beautiful opportunity they have this year to come out and be like, we are the best private school team to ever exist if they beat Liberty. I mean, it's because it's gotten boring with them beating the dog out of all these D1 teams. There is a beautiful opportunity for Parish here with idiots like us saying Liberty's going to come in and beat everyone, to be like, y'all don't know crap and we're going to show you. I mean, it gives me chills thinking about it. It's going to be a fun time. But
October 18th. I was gonna say October 18th is that game. Everybody, that's the game for sure for the season for sure. But
I'll be there. And actually, no, I can't say that because Walker told me not to. So we'll shelf that unless it actually happens. See, I'm a man of my word. Moving on to Prestonwood Christian, 7-4 in 2023. They finished second in TAPPS Division 1, District 1. In terms of athletes, senior defensive line Jack Harwell, maybe my favorite player in the entirety of TAPPS Division 1, maybe TAPPS period. I love Jack Harwell. I cannot believe he does not have more offers than he has. He is electric. I think he's going to dominate this season. We have senior quarterback TJ Hobbs, the transfer from Denton Ryan, and also Nolan Catholic. The dude can throw a football like just standing, not even moving, like 55 yards. It's ridiculous. The dude is an elite athlete. We also have senior athlete Enzo Bingham, the wide receiver MVP at the TAPPS TXPS retreat. We have senior running back Takashi Shaw, who is formerly of TCA, who is also a freak. We've got senior running back Caden Collins, who's also a dog that we've seen before. Another dog, I'm just listing this for every guy on Prestonwood's roster, is wide receiver / defensive back David Madison, the Oregon State commit, an absolute lockdown corner. I can't think of anyone you'd rather have playing corner for you. And also, finally, we have junior defensive lineman Eddie Brownstein. So, Walker, we just went on these long tangents about Parish and Liberty Christian. Prestonwood's got some dudes, and Donnie Yantis runs that program like a collegiate program. It's kind of an easy answer, but do you think there's any way that Prestonwood could sneak up on Parish or Liberty?
Yeah, when we were making the chart, that was one of the storylines I had was, can Prestonwood cause chaos? And I mean, they have the dudes to do it. And for the past, and if you remember last year, right? In the district game, right, Wes?
Yeah.
That was a fun one with Parish. Like that was
It was.
back and forth gunslinging game. And so they have the talent to do it. They have the scheme to do it. They have some dudes to do it. And there's some other guys we didn't mention, like the tight end Caleb Bengard and other guys. Like they have some dudes over there, especially they always have 6'3" guys on the offensive line. They just always will have the dudes up there. So it's gonna be interesting to see. It's gonna be really up to Donnie Yantis and stuff. You got to have that stuff down to perfection and let. There might be more talented teams, of course, but sometimes you got to out scheme them. And if they can out scheme a couple guys, that will cause some chaos in TAPPS Division 1.
It will absolutely. Ryan Schroeder, Prestonwood, loaded with talent. Only problem is there's a lot of talent in D1. What's your outlook for the Lions in 24?
I hate to look at it from just a quarterback perspective, but I've just been looking at TJ stats from last year at Denton Ryan. And the number one name that comes to my head, I actually forgot the fact that I knew this guy's name is, if anyone follows public school at all like that, Braden Mussett. He's took a lot of snaps away from TJ last year. Not a bunch of snaps, but it took a couple of snaps away from him. And overall, this team went 8-3 in their season. But I think the number one thing I think about from TJ's perspective, right, is he did come from the 5A perspective of a public school, and he is going to bring that into this Prestonwood squad. I'm be excited to see what he does with a weaker competition in some aspect in the private school field versus the teams that Denton Ryan was playing, because I think TJ could be really strong with some of these weapons that Prestonwood has as well from the offensive perspective. It'll be interesting to see what happens, especially when he gets to be the number one option at QB at Prestonwood.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think top end talent, I think they're up there with Prestonwood and Parish. It's just the depth of talent at they're up there with Liberty, Liberty and Parish.
Yeah.
It's just the depth of top end talent with Parish and Liberty. Like all their starters are almost D1 guys. Prestonwood, you've got about 7 guys there that are really good. But after that, it's kind of a question mark. Not saying those guys can't compete. It's just there's not the name recognition there we have. And maybe we'll get 3 weeks into the season and be like, oh my God, Prestonwood, like they could be number 2. But
I'll say this: like after watching them against St. Thomas and that 70-70 shootout that there was, they just have dudes. They have guys that have been through the program that are like 6'2", 6'1", and they just compete. And we'll know about them during the season. And so, I'm not saying it's gonna be they're gonna be in our rankings spot for a reason, but they could cause chaos. Truly.
Yeah, no, they absolutely could. Okay, so that being said, that wraps up our discussion on Prestonwood, and now we move into Trinity Christian Addison. 3-8 last season. They finished 3rd in District 1. Some talent they have is senior offensive lineman Jaden Beckley, the Oklahoma State commit. We have senior tight end / linebacker Soren Walker. Do you have any idea how to say his last name?
May, I don't know. Just keep going.
Close enough. We have new year of me just butchering guys' names. I apologize, Soren. We have senior defensive back Ryan Elms. We have junior quarterback Hunter Flatt, and we have senior athlete Ben Schumacher. So Walker, TCA, again, another team that has talent, but their problem is they fall in a district that has talent everywhere. Again, some good top end guys. Again, you said you liked Hunter Flatt. I like Schumacher and Beckley, obviously. It's just not going to be enough in my opinion. They'll probably finish middle of the pack, and we'll get into our rankings in District 1. It's just I don't think there's really any shot to reach, the top dogs.
I really like Ryan Elms. Looking into him more, he is the state champion. The guy has him really ranked high, and I was curious because then I looked into it. He has him. He's the state champion in the 200 meter, and he's 6'3", like can be kind of a nickel strong safety type of role where he can just come in and just make tackles. He'll be a big time player for any college. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. He'll be their big time player for this squad.
Yeah, no, that'll be interesting. And yeah, I mean, maybe he can help them exceed expectations moving into the season. But it's going to be tough. There's a lot of really good teams in this district. Ryan Schroeder, TCA Addison, loaded district. Your thoughts on how they perform this year?
Yeah, I was actually just looking at their schedule really quick. I think the way to kind of like I don't know how to describe this, but like kind of like the way to measure success maybe a little bit for them in some aspect. Everyone measures success by state championships and playoff success and stuff like that. But when you play in a district like this, and I think you could say this about Legacy and Bishop Lynch too, because I think that it's pretty comparable between all these teams together, is how you perform the non-district schedule. I think the TCA's non-district is Green Hill, West, the 3A team from West Texas, Life, Waxahachie, and then St. Mark's. Theoretically speaking, did I say Waxahachie? Waxahachie?
No. I just laughed because we played Waxahachie live when I was like a junior in high school.
What are they? I was trying to figure that out too. But anyways, long story short,
I don't know.
I just looked it up. They are 4A as well. But yeah, you could measure success between a 4A school and a 3A school as two of your non-district games. I think in some variety or some way, playing two SBC teams and two public school teams is a way to measure success. And I think if TCA can go out and do better than 3 and 8 last year, seeing if they beat Bishop Lynch, seeing if they beat Nolan Catholic, Legacy Christian, some teams like that and stuff like that in district. I mean, you could measure success pretty highly with a team like Trinity Christian Addison just from performing that well on a non-district and maybe the lower end district perspective.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think they've got a good shot to perform well in non-district and hopefully build some momentum, but it'll be interesting. Like we've said, dude, it's Murderer's Row, it's the District of Doom, it's whatever you want to say. District 1 and Division 1 is nasty this year. But ironically, that will conclude our discussion of District 1, and we will move into District 2, starting with Antonian Prep. In terms of talent they have, they've got senior running back Mikey Moreno, sophomore quarterback Rogan Parsons, senior athlete Jude Balderas. Both of those guys are transfers. Senior wide receiver Isaiah Fox, senior defensive lineman Joe Carrion, and a big offensive line featuring Chris Watt, Luca Salvatore, Matt Samiengo, and then Drake Carr. Again, I apologize. There's probably at least 3 names in there I butchered. But Walker, we were speaking off air before it started, and we mentioned that while they lose big guys like Jay Siscano and Raleigh Strode, I said that the most important position group you can retain is the offensive line because it's kind of the unsung heroes. It's the engine that makes the car run. I think they're still going to be very good with this offensive line. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
They're going to be, how do I say that? They're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be as good as last year. It's a Jay Toscano Raleigh Show connection doesn't come often. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's hard to have that every single year. And so it's going to be hard to replace that. They're going to be really good. I'm very excited to see how this team progresses. And I think they have the talent to compete in TAPPS Division 1, especially in the South. It's going to be hard replacing that connection where, especially last year, remember Wes against Parish, guys were even Parish was like, dang, this connection is something else. Like that's gonna be hard to replace this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you mentioned, like I think they took a lot of people by surprise in that was that semifinal game last year. I mean, they were a dang good team, and like you said, Jace Toscano to Riley Strode connection doesn't come around just a whole bunch. It's hard to replace. However, I think that offensive line is going to be valuable to retain, and it will be interesting. Ryan Schroeder, Antonian Prep, the Apaches moving into 2024. How do you like their odds?
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, I think what y'all said is exactly right. You know, just kind of like losing the star power is really going to affect the next year, and just kind of affect this year, especially with how things unfold with the district changing around and stuff like that. I think things are going to look a little bit different from a lot of perspectives. But something I wanted to bring up with all this is, you talk about it from a whole Division I scale, right? You have 7 teams in the north and 8 teams in the south. From a non-district perspective, right? You have to play every team in your district for both of these, right? So in the north, they have to play 6 district games. In the south, they have to play 7 district games. So then at that point, that only allows you to play 3 non-district games, almost like a college football, type thing where you only get 3 non-conference games. You only get 3 non-district games in the high school level for, teams in the south of D1 or District 2. With that being said, though, it's like, the first game of the year for Antonian is Holy Cross, which we know, is always a battle for that and stuff. And then they're able to schedule one public school team, and then they have regions. So I think in some variety, some way, they're trying to prepare for a season where they're going to have to play a gauntlet going in and stuff like that, whatever that may be. But yeah, you try to schedule those non-district games, and this is going to be across the board for all these South teams. You try to schedule a non-district to prepare for your hard district when it comes to, a schedule of public school games, whatever. That's how the private school teams usually do it. It's hard when you only have 3 non-district games to do that and to kind of judge your team before you get into district. With that being said, though, I think this team, is pretty level to to make a run again, and it is hard to with the guys that have left with Toscano and Raleigh Strode. I mean that like y'all said, it's a once in a few year type of connection that you don't really get every year.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I would have loved three a 3-game non-district slate because that would have saved me from playing Wascom and Malakoff and Parish and just getting the absolute dog knocked out of us, and then having like 8 of our guys hurt moving into district. But we could still beat Gorman and Brook Hill. So
some coaches like the non-district schedule because I mean, I actually from a coaching perspective, you love to see you can try out different schemes across different non-district games going into district. If you only have 3 non-district games, you run into a situation where I had a QB battle and now I only have 3 games to see it. I wanted to be a run offense, and I'm realizing my pass offense is better, and it's in the 3rd game of the year at Regions. Now I got to get ready for St. Michael's the next week. So it's like,
yeah, the runway is much shorter whenever the non-district
100%,
schedule is compressed
100%.
that much. That's a really good way of putting it. I didn't even think about that. Walker, looks like you want to say something.
Rogan Parson, though, the transfer in from somewhere in San Antonio, is a kid that's going to be really interesting to watch to see how good he actually is. No huddle film, but already has an offer from UTSA from a camp. Interesting. I think he stands at like 6'1", very interesting, and an offense like there where they pass unbelievable amount of times. It is going to be one to watch and see if he becomes a 3-year starter and is going to excel down in San Antonio. They're not they're a squad that has never slouched with talent, especially Division I talent. They've had it in years past. So it's gonna be interesting to watch to see how they do. They're a very, very good team. Yeah, it's gonna be very, very good. I think him with Jude Baleris, also the incoming transfer from somewhere else in San Antonio. There's gonna be 2 impact transfers that they're gonna need to have. That was the question going into this season. Who's gonna replace Jace? They have weapons, they always do. Who's gonna replace Jace? And having a kid like this who looks talented coming in, that's huge for Antonian Prep and their chances to win district. Which, if he did not come in, or he doesn't achieve what we expect him to be, it could be a rough year for Antonian.
Absolutely. No, it'll be very interesting to see how he and the rest of the Apaches perform this upcoming season. Moving on, though, we will cover Austin St. Michael's. And it says here in the script, and this is odd for me because normally I prepare the scripts, but Walker has done a fantastic job here. It says rebrand to St. Mike's Prep. Am I misreading something there?
No, shout out to the guy when I was looking over his stuff. That's what I realized that is it's now I always wondered why he chose that logo and I was like, why? And then I looked into it a little bit and yeah, they rebranded to a prep school, I guess, to St.
Hmm.
Michael's Prep. And they're now called instead of the Crusaders, they're called the Warriors. So
Huh.
that's a little different, but yeah, they're a new squad, a little different of the school environment.
Huh. I mean, I'd St. Mike's rolls off the tongue a little bit better than Austin St. Michael's, so I'm fine with that. I think it's a pretty cool rebrand. But in terms of their on-field performance last year, they went 3-4 in district and finished sixth. I really do think we cursed that program from the second we picked them to win district in 2022. But that is neither here nor there. In terms of athletes, senior athlete Utah Anderson, who's an absolute monster who we've liked for a long time. We've got senior offensive/defensive lineman Miller Bonsack. We've got senior
That kid-
athlete.
That kid's a dog, by the way. Continue, but yeah, I
Yep,
like him.
absolutely. We've got senior athlete Pierce Kovacs. We've got junior athlete Andres Patino, and we've got sophomore quarterback Nico Anderson. So Walker, the Crusaders/Warriors/St. Mike's Prep has fallen on a bit of hard times in the past couple years. They've got some good players this year, but again, not so much as the North. The South still has a collection of good talent, whether it be Antonian, St. Thomas, or maybe Central or Concordia sneaking up there. What are your thoughts on St. Michael's and the team they have moving into 2024?
I think they're going to be one to watch, and I'm very excited to hopefully get back to the St. Mike's of old that we really liked. I think Utah Anderson is one of the most underrated guys in all of TAPPS Division One. I think the guy has him as like his most underrated athlete, and so I don't want to steal his shine, but I absolutely agree too. There's a reason he won DB of the year in TAPPS Division Two last year. The kid is an absolute dog for us. Um, bright potential, and I believe he's absolutely at least an FCS guy. He absolutely is. Bonsack is a guy who I watched his film a while back, a couple months ago, and I was really impressed. And same with Kovacs and Patino. They have some good film, and they're going to be key pieces for St. Michael's. And Nico Anderson was a guy who started, I believe, or at least played games for St. Michael's as a true freshman. And so having that experience under his belt, and he didn't look bad at all. So he could be one to watch for the next couple of years. So St. Michael's is going to shock some people this year, I think.
Absolutely. We will get into where we have them slotted in our rankings in a little bit. Ryan Schroeder, Austin St. Michael's, St. Mike's, St. Migos, whatever you want to call them, your thoughts on them moving into this season?
Dude, why did they not change to St. Migos? That'd have been a lot
I was
more
about to say,
fun.
dude, that'd be hard.
That'd be
Yeah.
so cool. St. Michael's Prep is cool too. Logo looks sick. We have another one on the Twitter that looks sick too. I always have the branding mind. You know what I'm saying? Always on the creative mind.
Real.
We gotta get the new logo up on the
I know.
scoreboard.
Oh yeah, on the scoreboard. No, overall, I think this team. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about in the past. We were on the top of the episode talking about how we've gone through the eras of St. Michael's with all the guys they've had throughout the times and all that, and nothing short of the fact that yeah, this is another season that could potentially be like that again, where a lot of pieces coming together. Maybe not with the star power that they used to have back in the day, but it's exciting to see what this team could be. And yeah, with like a lot of teams in this district, it's really a toss up until you get to those top powers a little bit. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will. Again, I think they've got the talent, especially with Utah Anderson, and like you said, Walker Miller Bonsack. I think they got the talent. It's just going to be a matter of how deep do they go because it's a really good district. So we will see. Moving on to another D1 team that's been good in prior years but struggled maybe recently. Central Catholic, 2-3 in district last year, fourth overall. The talent compiles of senior quarterback Garrett Tyser, who I remember watching first as a sophomore in 2022, in that game against Bishop Lynch in, I want to say it wasn't Mahia, it was around Waco. I don't know, but Garrett Tyser, really good quarterback. We got senior wide receiver Jeremy Birch. We got senior tight end Bennett Stein. We've got senior defensive back Luke Harrison. We've got junior defensive back Avon Houston and sophomore athlete Antonio Guevara, who Walker has labeled as one to watch. So Walker, let's go right into that. Sophomore athlete Antonio Guevara, what are your thoughts on him? And then as Central Catholic overall moving into the season?
So he was a big guy for JV last year, but over the season, I think he played a lot more on the varsity level. And then after talking to a couple guys at TAPPS Con, They were like, yeah, you need to put him on his radar for next year. He's going to be a big time player for us. So I just wanted to mention that. But Tyser and Birch, Jeremy Birch, big time weapon for them, especially as well as Bennett Stein. Those are going to be the two big weapons for Garrett Tyser this year. Both bring a different skill set, of course, because tight end and wide receiver, but both are going to be big weapons for him. They don't have the dudes on the offensive line that they usually have had of Central Catholic past. So that's not going to be something they're going to be able to rely on as much. They'll probably have some dudes. I just don't know them on the top of my head, but it's not the dudes of old, right? So it's going to be interesting. Luke Harrison, who I'm going to guess is the younger brother of Caleb Harrison, is going to be a big weapon for them on the defense, especially with Avin Houston. Avin Houston was a guy that was supposed to come to a retreat, but 6'3", long, lanky corner safety role is going to be a big weapon for them this year, especially he's going to be a junior this upcoming season. So overall, they have some dudes. I expect them to be compete a lot more. And as we know, there's probably not a better environment to play some Texas high school football other than Button, where the Buttons play. So expect big things from the Buttons this year.
Absolutely. I remember. So did we say button correlates to rattlesnake because the buttons are the coils on the tail that shake? Is that what it is?
Like a baby rattlesnake is like a button or something
Oh,
like that. I think something like that along those lines. Yes.
I need to look that up again. But yeah, dude, I know we say it every year, and if I find a way to get out to Lubbock for a game, I really don't have an excuse not to find a way to get to San Antonio. I have got to see a game at Central. I really, really just want to be in that environment. That would be so incredibly awesome. Ryan Schroeder, Central Catholic, giving them a brief preview. Your thoughts on them this year?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going through things with everything with all this and stuff. I mean, the main person they lose is Jonathan Wankum. How you say that? Wankum. Uh, well, I don't know how to say his name, but he was the one last year that had most of their carries on the rushing side. Had some receiving yards for a variety and stuff, and that's a big loss for them. He's gone to graduation, but yeah, a guy that played every game last year was Birch. Birch played every single game last year. Was kind of like one of their best junior guys on that team, along with Tyser, who obviously was their main quarterback through last year and stuff. So. Yeah, it'll be exciting to see what goes down this year. I did want to mention this. I know this is not the D3 segment or whatever Holy Cross is now, D2, whatever. But Holy Cross has basically scheduled all of these teams in D1 to play in their non-district schedule. So it feels like this entire district, in some capacity, I know there's not a lot of San Antonio teams, so they're trying to probably stay in that same area a little bit, but Holy Cross is putting it on the schedule to play these D1 teams in this district, and I'm excited to see how each one of them matches up with Holy Cross comparatively across these different ways because it's interesting to see how that goes around.
Yeah, no, it definitely will. I mean, it's interesting to even trans-divisional. Yeah, I get trans and inter mixed up, but interdivisional. Which one's across? Trans is across. I think
Uh,
inter is too.
Yeah.
yeah.
Intra is within inter. I pride myself on being a man of words, and I just completely butchered all that. The interdivision, even interdivisional matchups of San Antonio teams are interesting, like you mentioned, with Holy Cross and Central, how they will stack up against each other. Again, I'm kind of repeating the same thing for a lot of these teams. They're going to be good. It's just a matter of do they go deep enough that they're able to challenge the teams like Antonian and St. Thomas at the top. And we'll probably repeat that for, well, maybe not Savio, but St. Pius as well. We will see. But I think and Concordia as well, we will see on Central Catholic moving into the season. As I just mentioned, Concordia Lutheran moving into the season, very, very interesting team. Only 1-4 last year, finished fifth in the district. Some athletes, also new offensive coordinator Eric Allen, who was previously the head coach at Northland Christian, who we are big fans of and will bring a very, very dynamic aspect of play calling and scheming to Concordia Lutheran. We've got senior quarterback Tanner Huckfelt, who we are very high on, has a PWO offer from Iowa State. I think he would fit great in Ames. Super nice kid, always fun to talk to at TAPPS 7-on-7. We've got senior wide receiver Noah Castillo, who's also a dog. Senior athlete Devin Scott, transfer from Northland Christian. We've got senior athlete Mason Dormany. We've got senior linebacker Luke Cohen. We've got senior offensive lineman Zane Steven, and then we've got senior offensive/defensive lineman Gavin Fitz, who is also a Northland transfer. What I will say is if we were doing again the lost episode of TXPS Advisors where we bought stock into, by the way, I crushed that episode. I picked
Dude,
Episcopal and Grace, who did horrible the last year. I would have been up, if this was a stock portfolio, I would have been up at least like 350%. That's neither here nor there. I do
we
say,
yeah. No, sorry. I was gonna say we should bring that out of the archive and put it on the website as a what's called one of the videos that I forgot what we called it on the website, but
we
there's an
we
archive on videos where you can put on the website. I don't know if that video would ever see the surface, but yes, that's
we
funny
really
that you
should
brought
do
that up.
that. I remember finishing filming that episode and say, I don't know if we can use any of this because it was the most chaotic thing. That if any of you have ever seen Barstool Sports Advisors with Dan Katz, Dave Portnoy, and Stuart Feiner, we tried to kind of model it after that. And I think it might have even been more insane than that. It was awesome. I don't know if that'll ever see the light of day. We might do a revamp of it at some point. I say all that to say is if we were buying stock like that episode in teams that were kind of poor last year that we think can be good this year, Concordia would be the team. And I don't want to put undue expectations on them, but they only won one district game last year, but bringing in guys like Devin Scott, Gavin Fitz, Eric Allen, another year of Tanner Huckfelt, Castillo, and all the other guys, I really, really do think they're primed to finish top 3 in this district at least. I'm really high on them. Walker, I know you are as well. What are your thoughts on Concordia Lutheran moving into the season?
I am really high on them. I really am. When looking at Concordia, I think there's not a person higher on Concordia than me going into this year. 7-on-7 was a kind of a taste of that. I think they were very good. They have the weapons, and the more and more I see of Tanner Huckfeld, the more and more I like my chances of them being really good this year. I think he's a top. I don't know what I'm going to say. Probably top 10 for sure. Top 10 quarterback in private school this year. You can keep going up a little bit on that list. I think he would be up there. I'm really, really impressed with Tanner Huckfeld. I think he has all the tools to be a really good quarterback this year. Around him, Nolan Catholic, Mason Dominic, adding Devin Scott's a great piece of that. It's gonna be interesting to see how they do this year. Losing Dayton Navy is a huge piece of that team, especially on the defense side of things. That's gonna be hurt them, but they have some dudes around him that I'm not too worried. This is a team that if you told me Antonian did not get that quarterback, I would put them second in that district. Now with him now being there, they're going to be fighting for that top 2 spot. And I could see that game with St. Thomas being even a little closer than what people would imagine. So, like Wes said, if you could put any stock into a team to doing really good this year, I would maybe choose Concordia Lutheran this year. I'm very excited about that team. So they have some dudes. I think Coach Allen over there at OC is going to work wonders for that team. So I'm very excited for that squad this year.
Absolutely. There will be a fun one to watch. Ryan Schroeder, Walker and I are very high on Concordia Lutheran moving into the season. I'm curious if you share the same opinion.
I think what most people forget about is this team went 8-4 last year. This is a team that competed really highly in the non-district wise of what they were playing. In the district wise, they went 1-3. So but their 3 losses came to the powerhouses of St. Thomas, Antonian, and Central was only a 6-point game, but lost to Central. And overall, the only other loss they had on there was the playoff loss to Parish and stuff. So they theoretically speaking, did what they needed to do throughout the season and got the wins they were, got wins that maybe were not all guaranteed. They get better this year. You add worse district opponents with, we're about to talk about Savio and a couple other schools and stuff like that. Those are more wins that you could potentially have with this Concordia team. They've gotten better as a team. Some of the other teams that they're going to go up against have gotten worse, like Antonian and stuff like that. So, I think overall perspective, I think you're right. I think we should be high on Concordia in some aspect because, yeah, I think Concordia has a chance to do what they did last year again against worse district competition with the new teams coming in. And overall, I think this is a net positive from Concordia from all standards.
I definitely think so. They will be very fun to watch, and we will keep tabs on them closely as the season progresses. Moving on to St. Dominic Savio, a team that performed well last year, however, seems to lose pretty much everyone. Head coach, a lot of key performers However, they bring in Malcolm Brown, the new head coach, obviously, and a former Texas Longhorn. If you don't know who Malcolm Brown is, a quick Google search will refresh your memory. One of the better players to come out of Texas football. In terms of athletes, they've got junior wide receiver Nolan Ray and senior linebacker Luke Reeb. Walker, I'm not going to mince words. It doesn't look like a great spot for Savio to be in. I'm not going to rag on him. It's just there's some talent in this district, and not a whole lot of it seems to be allocated towards Savio at the moment. Can they steal a game in district? Maybe, but gun to my head, I don't know where they pick it up. I mean, maybe against St. Mike's or Pius, but I mean, it's going to be, it seems like it'll be some tough sledding. Do you share the same opinion?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. They lost their best ever senior class last year, ever, and they're saying that those five guys of the defensive end, I forget his name on the top of my head, but Leighton Riviere, David Duplantier, Jaden Williams, and Bobby Humphreys. Those four were phenomenal athletes, and they won a lot of games. And I could argue last year, Leighton Riviere was the second best quarterback in private school in Austin, easily. So they had dudes. That's hard to replace. And so it's gonna be interesting to see where the team being real, man. I wish that was a team that went independent again for at least 2 more years. That team needed to grow and need to develop and have more kids. This is a team that don't even have a I'm not trying to rag on them. It's not even a team that has their own stadium, their own football field. So this is a program that needed to grow, especially after bringing in a lot of 1-year transfers for that squad. Plus, we're at Layton. That's a long way back up, and they needed to find a way. But hopefully, with a coach like Malcolm Brown, he can bring in talent and bring in the kids in an Austin area where they're located. They can bring some kids in and hopefully refurbish that program. But yeah, right now it doesn't look like they're going to be a top team in that district for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like you said, not to rag on them, but it's an uphill battle. I mean, you lose a lot. It's not a team or a program, I should say, that seems to have a lot of infrastructure in place to support a high-level football program. It'll be interesting. If there's any guy that can help turn that around, I would guess it's Malcolm Brown with his resume of elite football production. We'll see if that transfers to a head coaching job at Savio. It'll be interesting. We'll just have to see, get a couple weeks in, feel it out, see how Savio's performing. And I hope they surprise us. I'd really like to see Savio be good this season. Moving on to a Houston area team, we have St Pius X. They went 1-3 in district last year. They finished third. In terms of athletes, they have senior Braxton Bice, senior linebacker Sam Williams, junior athlete Rome Stanford, who we've been high on for several years, the transfer from Northland. We have sophomore athlete Andrew Kirkland, sophomore athlete Amir Parks Brooks, and sophomore quarterback Kobe Miles. Both Amir and Kobe Miles are also transfers. So, Walker, I'll let you take this because you went and saw St. Pius in the spring. I'm curious to see what you thought of them and how the kind of the vibe you got around the program being there in around May.
No, yeah, I think this is going to be the first year under the new head coach, Stevens, I believe is his name. I think he's going to head that team in the right direction, man. He's a good dude. I was talking to him about it because he came from another place, but he grew up, I think, through Pius or something like that. But when the job opened, he wanted that job badly because he understands how good St. Pius can be, and he loves the location, he loves the school. And I think having a guy like that leading the program, and they're going to be in the right direction. So, but Braxton Bice is a kid. He came from Bridgeland, and I didn't know much about him last year, but he looks pretty good, and he's going to be one to watch this year. He's going to be one to watch for sure. Sam Williams is another guy that we've heard about for years, and he's a big dude, man. And he's going to be a good linebacker, maybe running back for them, maybe a little bit. But for sure, on the defensive side, he's going to make his mark known, make his presence known for sure. On the other guys, they have some dudes, but they're going to be a very young team. And so that's going to be maybe where they struggle a little bit this year. But, Kobe Miles is a guy that piqued my interest. I think Parks Brooks moved in after I was there. Andrew Kirkland was a guy who made his presence known last year as a freshman, but the big piece, Rome Stanford transfers in from Northland Christian. We didn't talk a lot about the retreat but there was a guy like, okay, we watched him at Northland Christian when he was a freshman, and I was like, okay, he's gonna be one to watch, but I didn't know much about him. And then when last year he made his presence known and was a big time player, and you're like, okay, it's Division 4, it's a good player, but is he Division 4 good or is he just really good? You know what I mean? And watching him at the TXPS retreat, I went, oh, this kid's gonna be good. And I absolutely think he's 6'1", maybe 6'2" now. He's going to be a Division 1 talent. He moves extremely well, and St. Pius got themselves a gem. And it's going to be interesting to watch to see how much he's going to get the ball nonstop this year, both sides of the ball. He will be. Let me see if I can make this comparison without going crazy. I think I will. And you can say no, but I think it is. He's going to be the closest we have to a Travis Hunter type athlete in TXPS. He's going to be a two-way star for St. Pius this year, and it's going to be awesome to see. Um, I do want to talk about Northland a little bit, just for like not even 30 seconds. It is crazy to see a school like that where they made the semifinal in TAPPS Division 4 last year go down to 6-man 1 year. It's crazy. I feel bad for that school. It's been a historic program in TAPPS, and hopefully they find their way back up to 11-man. But it was kind of sad to see that go. But overall, St. Pius, really good squad. They're going to be some dudes. I'm excited to see Kobe Miles develop for the next couple years after Buys leaves.
Yeah, I agree. Ryan Schroeder, St. Pius moving into the season. High level thoughts.
Yeah, I think I mean we saw Braxton Buys at what's it called. We saw him at our
The
retreat,
retreat.
and he was incredible. I mean he was great when he was competing out there with the rest of those guys. I mean it was great. That's the best part about the retreat was we really got to see a lot of guys. I mean we said this at the top of the episode too, but we got to see a lot of guys in person that we don't get to see. San Antonio guys, all that kind of stuff. You know, just guys that we really lose the aspect of, or especially me and Wes who are in the DFW area, or if you're like me in Oklahoma. You know, it's hard to get down to the Houston, San Antonio, Austin games and stuff like that. But yeah, Braxton, you know, was great to see you there as well. The main guy they lose from a rushing perspective is Joshua Mitchell. Joshua Mitchell, you know, with 1,200 yards last season and stuff like that on the ground. That's definitely someone, you know, he had 7 touchdowns, you know, 1,200 yards. I mean, that's a good season theoretically in the private school era. And I think that I think overall this team floats in the same boat as the rest of the ones we keep talking about. They float in the boat of you know St. Michael's and Central Catholic and all that aspect. You know, it's kind of all in that same vein. So I'm excited to see what this team could do, especially since a lot of those guys were really nice to meet in person at especially Braxton was to meet in person at a retreat. So we'll see what all happens this year for St. Pius.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be very interesting. Moving on to a team that we will have a decent amount to talk about. Houston St. Thomas, 4-0 in district last year, a state finalist, one of the best teams we've seen come out of Houston in private school. I mean, probably since the St. Pius era teams, Grant Gunnell and Chase Lane. But in terms of who they have this year, we've got senior center Anthony Pellerin, senior quarterback transfer Roy Thomas Jenkins, formerly of Beaumont Kelly back when he was a freshman. We have senior defensive back Demarcus Baptiste, excuse me. We have the linebacker duo of senior Cooper David and senior John Carr III. We've got junior wide receiver Derek Stevenson, who ran a 4.29 laser, which is almost unfathomable. It's Quentin Brown type speed. We've got junior running back Javon Waldron, senior offensive lineman Jake Ghislaine. We have senior defensive lineman Jack Reed, another senior defensive lineman Trace Langland, and junior tight end wide receiver, one of the top prospects in TXPS, Benny Akura, who has how big are his hands, Walker?
They're like 10 and a half, or no, maybe 12. Dude, I don't know. Oh, look.
That's
Either
ridiculous.
way, yeah, unreal.
Yeah, but St. Thomas, obviously, elite is almost an understatement to say how good they were last year. This year, they obviously lose a lot, whether that's Dante Lewis, Johan Cardenas, Luke Edgecombe at receiver. Just so much talent outflow, but there is guys that are getting older and significant talent inflow, whether that be Roy Thomas Jenkins, Stevenson, or Waldron. Walker, they're in an interesting spot. I think they're still primed to win the South, but it might not be a done deal heading into the season. Your thoughts?
No, 12-inch hands, by the way.
Woo.
Just such a thing where like if you weren't in this, you'd be like weird. But like as an athlete, like that's
It's important.
it's
Yeah.
so important. Anyways,
Yeah.
yes, they're for sure going to be the favorites going into this year for good reason. Roy Thomas Jenkins comes in with a lot of confidence for that squad. And you lose Luke Edgecombe and other guys, and you're like, are they going to be good? Are they going to not? With losing, it's hard to replace Dante Lewis and Johan Cardenas and Luke Edgecombe on one offensive side, And I think they do, maybe not to that level because that team was just phenomenal cohesively for 1 year, but they have talent. And that is something a lot of other teams, maybe in that district, can't say. They have guys who can go play Division I football on that offense, and it's going to be interesting to watch to see how they gel. The offense will be there. They will score with anyone in the country, with anyone in the state, especially in private school. But it will be interesting to see how cohesive they are. Defensively, that's where the issue is. They lose Aaron Valentine at the safety position, Michael Anthony Akura on the defensive line, Tyler Day, who was phenomenal last year at the linebacking spot. Other guys around there, they lose a lot. They lose the Bonner, Keenan Bonner as well. They lose a lot on defense. And I think Cooper Davis and John Carr on that linebacking spot will be great for them. I think they were underrated last year. I think they're going to be prized for a good year this year. Trey Slangen was a great piece for them last year. And I think having DeMarcus Baptiste in the DB room will be key for them. Albina Ume will come back this year after being hurt in what game did I watch him at? Regents game. He got hurt, so he will be back for the whole of this year, which will be huge for him. I don't think there's a guy who has more potential than probably Benny Akura on that entire team. He will be a force to be reckoned with this year after being in a weight room again. So expect that team to do really good this year. I'm excited to watch them play. I don't think it's as good as the team last year. It's hard to replace a lot of Division I guys like they did last year. So it'll be interesting to watch, but they're definitely the favorites in TAPPS Division I District 2.
Absolutely, and as they should be. Ryan Schroeder, obviously a roster that is chock full of talent, like I mentioned, even with the outflows from 2023. Your thoughts on the Eagles moving into a fresh season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing I'm always going to come back to about this team is the Prestonwood game last season in the semifinals, right? I mean, the shootout we talked about as well with the 73-62 final for that game. That was the question we had forever was, hey, is Prestonwood going to beat St. Thomas, and will the finals actually be St. Thomas versus Parish, or will it be a two-dog fight for the North guy with the North in the championship like it normally is between Preston and Parish? The year before was Preston and Parish. Like, that's the general assumption that we have is, that the North runs it. And in reality, Houston St. Thomas has been a, 8-win team, 7-8-win team for the entire time we've had this podcast going. You know what I'm saying? Like, this team has been good for years. You then, you kind of have a downfall year and we talked about the standard, right? Well, we had a Parish. St. Thomas has their own standard in its own way. And this is a lower end team for the amount of guys that graduated and went on to the next level, right? And so you compare that to the fact that the north side has only gotten better with adding Liberty. Prestonwood is a really great team again this year, and it really becomes hard to realize, wow, the north is just getting more and more stacked, and the south really has one leader to it in the Houston St. Thomas, and that's where I kind of struggle with, because you really need Houston St. Thomas to be the leader of the south. All that being said, I'll talk about them in the district, in their own district. The two teams we talked about having a chance against them, was what's called. I had them back to back.
Antonian and Concordian.
Yeah, they're right. They're back to back. They're back to back weeks. It's October 18th, and then it's October 24th. It's at Antonian, then home against Concordia. So in some aspect or another, you would like to have those out of your 7 district games. You would like those to be a little bit more spread out from each other, and they're not. They're back to back. So kind of brings some of that to the table of like, wow, this is Houston St. Thomas is the favorite, but in some variety or another, we talked about those two teams being on the upset alert, and if it's going to come anyway, back to back would make the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be incredibly exciting to watch those 3 weeks of football. I think it's going to be really, really cool to see how all that shakes out, and that will be a defining stretch in Division I District 2 to see how it all shakes out. Very excited. The more I talk about it, the more excited I get for the season. It's going to be fantastic. But before we move on, we have one final team to cover, and that is TMI Episcopal. The Panthers, I think, went 2-5 last year, finished 7th in their district. Key athletes this year, we have sophomore quarterback Grant Sweeney, who we got to see at the retreat, looked very, very good. Junior athlete Brody Warwick, junior athlete Aiden McDaniel, and sophomore defensive end and tight end Reed Erdos. So, Walker, we're familiar with Grant Sweeney. I'm not so much with the other guys. Sweeney looked very good at the retreat, especially for just a sophomore. I think he's going to be primed to do very good things with TMI. Your thought on the Panthers as a whole moving into the season?
Yeah, dude, he's going to be phenomenal. I think he has D1 FCS potential, truly. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. On the other side, I think I really like Brody Warwick and Aiden McDaniel. I think they're going to be two key pieces, two of guys who have played the past couple years, have been on the squad. They're going to be good pieces for that TMI Episcopal squad. Expect good things from them. And also Reed Erdos. You can't teach 6'6", and that's what he is. So expect good things from him. I think he has a bright future ahead of him, especially he's only going to be a sophomore next year. So TMI Episcopal is a team that's kind of struggled past couple years, but they always have dudes in here and there, and I think Grant Sweeney will lead them to a couple wins. I really do like it. Go watch that film for a freshman last year. Pretty dang impressive.
Absolutely. Ryan Schroeder, TMI Episcopal, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I know we're going into the back half of this a little bit and stuff. So real quick, I think Grant Sweeney, yeah, he's going to be incredible. He's only in his sophomore season, so a lot more to gain from there on. But with all that being said, this is a TMI team that definitely has struggled over the last few years, right? The biggest loss to me is a 27-point loss last year to a Shiner team that was already kind of on the downhill in the D4 spectrum. And you move TMI up to the D1 scope as well. And this is just going to get hard, right? This is going to be very, very hard for them. So I'm excited to see how Sweeney grows over time. But yeah, this will definitely be a test for TMI this year for sure.
I think so. And again, D1's got a lot of talent in it. If, again, we're very high on Sweeney, especially if they can get some things clicking. And if there's the silver lining here is they're in the South. It's not as log jammed talent wise as the North is. So if there's a district in Division I that TMI can shake some things up in, it's the D1 South. So it'll be incredibly interesting. But all that being said, that's actually a comprehensive review of all the teams in Division I that took about an hour and a half, I think, if my time's correct. So we've got some storylines here, guys. I will say for the sake of time, we pick 2 or 3, go into them, because a lot of these we've already covered, in the course of talking about these teams. But Walker Lott, from the list that we've got, what sticks out to you that you want to discuss?
I'll talk about the first one because I think that's a big piece of it. 7 and 8 team districts is going to change massively for TAPPS Division I, which have 5 and 5 the past 2 years, maybe 4 past 4 years, where everyone made playoffs. It didn't really matter who you were, and it made guys made for some easy matchups in round ones. Hopefully because of this, it's going to be a little bit different this year. You might have a North bracket now and a South bracket now, not, teams playing both sides, which was kind of cool, but it's just going to be a little bit different now this year, I think, probably. It'll be more closer to the TAPPS 2 and 3 divisions brackets of old. So, yes.
That's so important. Well, I mean, let's recognize the fact that if it's a North versus South setup like we have in D2 and we used to have in D3, I don't know if it's still in D3, but if we have that, that's huge. That allows for Houston St. Thomas to be in the championship instead of, I'm just going to call it now. I'll call it Liberty versus St. Thomas. Now, people might not like that because in some variety or another, you would love to see that Parish Liberty battle in the championship. I know some people might want to see that in the championship. So that might be a negative in some people's minds, but it gives the South a chance, right? It gives the South a chance to prove who really is the best team in the South without losing to a bunch of North teams on the way in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I would rather see, especially in D1 and especially this year specifically, I would rather see a combined playoff bracket instead of, North versus South, simply because if I get robbed of a Parish Liberty State title game,
Yeah.
I will commit arson on a grand scale. Like I need to see that. And like, I think in some years it would be good to I guess there's no other way to say than protect the South, I guess, and give them a guaranteed representative in the state championship game. But I've said this before. I understand qualms about, having teams that are, especially when we said in the North, that are too good, that should be state championship
Yeah.
competitors losing in like the second or third round. Like on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, if they're good enough, they're going to win state. And if they're not, they're not. I mean, you're getting into semantics when you're getting into what round they're eliminated in. Long story short, I'd rather see a combined playoff. Maybe it's just because I don't know, but it will be cool. It will be cool to see if they have a North and a Southern playoff bracket.
If anyone has the information on that, by the way, because that should be decided before the year starts. That shouldn't be a mid-season decision. So if anyone has the information on what it's going to be, let us know in the comments. I think that's interesting to know.
That would be fantastic. All right, Walker, what else you want to hit? We got about 2 more.
The idea of some of those TAPPS that we kind of talked to a little bit, but the TAPPS Division 2 teams and the independent team and Savio rising up, it's gonna be interesting to see how they do, because that's a big talent gap. And Frisco Legacy, for example, they're a good squad. You'll see in a second how we kind of placed them, but they played a team like Bishop Dunn, who was not good last year in their district. You're not going to really have a Bishop Dunn type team in your district this year. Nolan was rough last year, but they're not that level, in my opinion. So,
now they're not going to get anyone on the competition level of Grace Community, but there might be. Liberty might come close.
Right, absolutely. So it's gonna be interesting to see there. But teams, especially in the South, St. Michael's, I forget the other two. St. Michael's, Savio, and TMI.
Yeah, TMI and Legacy. Yeah.
There was a year TMI 2 years ago lost to Shiner St. Paul in district or in non-district play. That was Division 4. You know what I mean? Like this is gonna be interesting to see. And when it first got announced, Wes and I both kind of said, I'll be shocked to see what teams go down or what times, go independent. None of them did. So they're ready for the task. And I think for a team like St. Mike's and a team for like TMI, they're ready for it. They're up for the challenge. Team like Savio, it's gonna be interesting to see how they do. So I think that's definitely the biggest question mark for those teams is, hey, can you do it?
Right. I think the only thing I'll say to this is we'll talk about this in a second. Teams like Savio, like you said, probably don't have a chance of getting a win or something like that. But if Legacy, St. Michael's or TMI pulls out wins in some capacity, like that's good in district getting wins. I know Legacy will. Legacy will get a district win. I feel like probably. I'm gonna guess Nolan or a couple others. Those feel like winnable games. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a jump, man. It's gonna be a jump. I think about TCA Addison sometimes a little bit too, when they went independent for a year to get out of that D1 bubble, and they won the independent TAPPS bracket or whatever it was,
the D5 championship.
Yeah, something like that, right? And they won. It might have been in JP2 dropped out of D2 that or D2 that year or whatever and stuff like that. Like things to think about in that aspect, right? This has happened before and none of them dropped out. So it'll be interesting to see how everything turns out, like we said.
I completely agree. I think the last thing that we should get to is the elite quarterback play in Division 1 that people might not fully realize. Walker, you want to describe to us the guys that are going to be there and how that's all going to play out?
Looking at the list, you have 5 Division 1 offered quarterbacks in TAPPS Division 1 this year. That is awesome. That is really, really cool. Maybe 6. I think Hobbs has a Grambling offer, so maybe 6. So that's 6 Division 1 quarterbacks. You also have guys like Ian Plute, Carter Devereaux, Grant Sweeney, Braxton Byes, and Garrett Tizer, who I think all are great quarterbacks in their own right too. This is going to be an elite quarterback play in TAPPS Division 1 that I don't think has been seen since the likes of like of 2021, where 2021, 2022, where there was guys north and south that were really good. Maybe majority north, but even in the south, where you have guys like RTJ, Sweeney, Byes, Huckfeld, Ticer, and Parson, who are all really, really good quarterbacks. Quarterback play will be really, really good this year. It's going to be fun to watch for us.
I think so. Ryan Schroeder, your thoughts on the elite quarterback play in Division 1?
Yeah, think about how many of these guys are transfers around too and stuff like that, right? I mean, Parsons a transfer, Quinton's another as a private school transfer. These are guys that have all come in some way or another to this area. And a guy like Sawyer, who's been through it all, man. Sawyer is a guy that stayed, is probably one of the, like, I think he just shines as the private school quarterback in my head at all times. He's the one that shines, right? Because Sawyer has been through it and came at the right time to Parish at that aspect. But yeah, guys like Sweeney, man, he's a sophomore quarterback going into this mix. What is to say Sweeney's not one of these top level guys by the time he's a senior as well? So it's exciting to see this. I think the quarterback competition will allow for a lot of high level games in the D1 level.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. We've seen some top level talent, especially with a lot of these guys like in TXPS overall, starting back, I guess it's 4 years ago now when we started actually covering games. We had the
Right.
inaugural class of Sawyer Anderson and Luke Carney and all of the starting freshman quarterback. All those guys are
Oh, yeah.
seniors now. I mean, it's
Oh.
golly, we're old, man. But it's cool. It's been really, really cool to see all those guys come in, not just be on varsity, start and lead, both in Carney's case and Sawyer's case.
Yep.
Start as freshmen and then win state championships every year through their junior year and have great chances both as seniors. I didn't even really think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that almost no one has ever done in Texas high school football. I mean, we are blessed to be a witness to greatness like that. It's really, really cool. All that to say, the talent level in TXPS, it's better than it ever has been. We say that every year because it keeps getting better. It's really, really cool to watch when you cover it like we do. It makes it that much more fun to do our job. But that being said, that will conclude the storylines. And now for the last part of the episode, the part that probably 3/4 of you skipped to the end of the video to see, we have our rankings for the season. So we will give you a Northern ranking, a Southern ranking, and then an overall TAPPS Division I power ranking. We will start with the North. And I think we already tipped our hands with this a bit, but at number 1, we have the Liberty Christian Warriors. At number 2, we have the Panthers of Parish Episcopal. At number 3, we have Prestonwood Christian. At number 4, we have Legacy Christian Academy out of Frisco. At number 5, we have Bishop Lynch, the Friars. Number 6, Nolan Catholic. And number 7, we have Trinity Christian Academy out of Addison. So, again, we spoke a lot about this. We kind of tipped our hand as to where we were going with these rankings. But Walker, high-level overview, our methodology, and why teams are where they are.
It makes sense on the top 3. Both Liberty and Parish were the state championships last year in their respective divisions, and I think Liberty moving up. I still think they're the better team, and they were the best team in private school this year. They don't lose anyone. Makes sense. Prestonwood was a semifinal team. They deserved that 3rd spot. Legacy, we think, was a team. What did they make? Like not the semifinals, but the quarterfinals. So
yeah, against All Saints. Against All Saints, yeah.
Yeah. So they're a good team. I think they're a solid team. I think they deserve that 4th spot. And then 5 through 7, I think it's gonna be interesting to watch. I think any team can go either way. TCA Addison team could be easily 5th. And I think, any of those, the 5 through 7, even maybe 4 could be moved around. It's gonna be interesting to watch there.
Definitely so. Ryan Schroeder, your thoughts on the overall Northern rankings?
I talked about this earlier. I didn't think it was 1A and 1B, and I think it's solidified 1 and 2 this year. And I think that's the answer I have in my head. I really do think that Liberty on paper looks better than Parish on paper. And that's nothing to say against what Parish has become. We said they have the highest not foundation, but they sit
Standard.
on standard. The standard is so high, right? But yeah, on paper wise, Liberty is better than Parish, and from what we know about Liberty and what we know, what we know, Parish lost and all these different things, right? Liberty is my 1, and I think Parish is my 2. But I don't think Prestonwood's that close to Parish, and I genuinely don't think Legacy is as close to Preston. Everything just kind of falls, right? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, when we get into 5 through 7 or even Legacy and stuff like that, yeah, you are totally right. Those are that's definitely we'll see how things figure out itself around. I mean, Coach Maddox and Nolan Catholic could beat Lynch and beat TCA Addison and beat Legacy. You never really know. But yeah, I definitely think those top 3 teams and everything just kind of slots into how it's supposed to slot, in my opinion. I don't think there's no groupings in that top 3 is what I have to say.
Yeah, no, I will say I always look for kind of definitive breaks in these rankings, maybe tiers you could say. And I think there's a pretty definitive break between Parish and Prestonwood. Not huge, but slight.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also a break. I wouldn't even say between Prestonwood and Legacy. I'll say between Legacy and Lynch. I'm
Mm,
pretty high on Legacy. I think
okay.
Legacy's got a great culture. They've got a lot of really good athletes as well, like kids that might not pop off the page, if you're looking at intangibles. But I went by spring ball, and I watched them a lot last year. Those kids can play football. I mean, I really do think that they're going to be poised to, at least solidify that 4 spot. Heck, maybe they can snipe Parish or not Parish. Maybe they can snipe Prestonwood off of there, make a name for themselves.
And they
But
and they took Prestonwood's guy at the D line, Marshall Tucker.
they
They
did.
took him, right? Out of anything you're going to talk about, that's a Marshall Tucker, revenge game or the opposite direction, whatever you think about. Just something to think about.
Yeah, no, I'm incredibly excited to watch him on that D line for Legacy. I think he's going to slot in really, really well there. But those are our northern rankings. In terms of the South, surprise, surprise, we have St. Thomas, the state finalists, at number 1. We have Concordia Lutheran at number 2. We have Antonian Prep out of San Antonio at number 3. Also from San Antonio, we've got Central Catholic, the Buttons, at number 4. At number 5, we have the band formerly known as St. Michael's, St. Mike's Prep, the Warriors. At number 6, we have St. Pius X out of Houston. At number 7, we have TMI Episcopal. And at number 8, rounding out the South, we have St. Dominic Savio. So yet again, Walker, we've spoken at length about each of these teams individually, and even a decent amount how they rank against each other. St. Thomas at first, obviously, we've got a few more groupings there. Your thoughts on the Southern rankings?
Yeah, I think St. Thomas is number 1 for sure right now. I think 2 and 3 could absolutely change, and I think 4 through 6 could absolutely change.
Yeah.
I think TMI could do some damage. I just don't know much about that team because where they are. I need to go catch a game this year for sure. But that's kind of if you're gonna tier it, probably 1, 2, and 3 are together, and then 4 through 6 are kind of together, and then 7 and 8. But it's going to be interesting to watch because I think it could cause chaos for sure amongst all these teams.
Yeah, definitely so. Ryan, your thoughts on the South?
I mean, yeah, I definitely think that like this one does have a kind of a grouping aspect to it versus the North in some aspect. I think St. Thomas is by itself, but yeah, like we said, Concordia and Antonian come at a really bad time for St. Thomas this year. And I think Concordia and Antonian are both teams that I think we're pretty high on in some capacity as well. And then I really do just kind of group in a lot of those teams at the bottom there. I mean, I really just kind of throw them in a pile together and stuff. But I will say that like I said, the way and I said when we were going through this, the way you measure success for some of these other teams is your non-district schedule, right? You try to measure success, whether that be the North or the South. Try to measure success with non-district when you don't think you have a chance in maybe your higher level district games and stuff like that. Because I think success is defined with the best wins of your season and overall great standing. Not as much when you get to the playoffs and you have to play against the powerhouses in this. If it is cross North and South, you're playing a powerhouse from the North just because of how you got lined up. So I measure success in a couple different ways, and I think some of these teams should as well.
Yeah, you would think the 3 guys that basically live, breathe, and sleep Texas private school football would know the playoff bracket of Division 1 by now. We do need to get on that. If anyone
Right.
has information on that, please let us know. I'm sure we'll probably have researched it and figured it out by the time we get done recording. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to see how that shakes out and where all of that ends up. But all that to say, we now come into the final segment of the episode, an amalgamation of the previous 2 rankings, the overall TAPPS Division 1 power ranking. Strap in, folks. This is what you've all been waiting for. At number 1, Liberty Christian out of Argyle. At number 2, Parish Episcopal. At number 3, we have Prestonwood. Number 4, St. Thomas out of Houston. Number 5, Concordia Lutheran. Number 6, Antonian Prep. Number 7, Legacy Christian. Number 8, Central Catholic. Number 9, Bishop Lynch. Number 10, St. Mike's Prep. Number 11, Houston St. Pius. Number 12, Trinity Christian Academy out of Addison. Number 13, Nolan Catholic. Number 14, TMI Episcopal. And number 15, St. Dominic Savio. So again, we're not going to completely dissect this because we basically just gave you the rationale in the previous 2 rankings. Walker, as it relates to now smushing the North and the South together, any comments, questions, concerns about where the Southern teams meet the Northern teams?
I think the South has gotten a little bit better, if I look right. I think having 4, 5, 6 of all South teams, I think that makes sense. So, I think those 3 teams are going to be really good. And you saw it last year where St. Thomas made the championship and Antonian made the semifinals, and they both beat teams that were in the North. So I think those teams are good, and I really have hype for Concordia this year. So that's kind of my rationale, and everything else basically makes sense.
I agree. Ryan Schroeder, same question to you.
I'm gonna say the exact same thing, right, with that. But it's crazy to think about the fact that yeah, I mean, it used to just be Parish Prestonwood 1-2, and then it kind of went St. Thomas, or sometimes we had St. Thomas above Prestonwood. The question was always St. Thomas and Prestonwood, and again, you add Liberty in here. The question is still St. Thomas or Prestonwood, and a 77-63 final or whatever it was. I don't know the exact score last year tells you that it was a shootout. Those teams are pretty comparable in a lot of aspects, and we'll see how things change this year, how comparable they are. But yeah, once again, it is that like, you stack up those two or three North teams up to the St. Thomas and Antonian level of what we had before. It's kind of similar in this aspect. Just add another team in Concordia and add another team in Liberty, and it's kind of the same script.
I agree with you. And to Walker's point about the South being marginally better this year, I would agree with that as well. I think in the previous couple years, we have basically, this list has been relatively easy because outside of St. Thomas, we basically copied the South list and pasted all the teams below the Northern teams. And this year, there's a little more shakeup. We've got a few more teams kind of slotting in amongst the Division I, District 1 teams. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to watch. Of course, these are simply predictions, and if the past is any indicator, we're going to get 2 weeks in, and this thing is going to be blown to smithereens. But that's the fun part about what we do. We can be right, we can be wrong. As long as we are shedding a light on private school sports, I would say we are doing our jobs well. But all of that to say, we have reached the end of our material to cover. And shoot, guys, we made it out of here. I think we hopped on at 7. We didn't start recording until later. We've nice little 3-hour chat among friends about things that they enjoy. Walker Lott, I'll turn to you first. Any closing comments regarding the D1 preview episode?
Oh, let's get out of here, man. I think they're done talking.
I love that. Short and sweet. Ryan Schroeder, the return of the lost son. Thank you for rejoining us. I've said before, you add an element to the podcast that makes it much more fun to record. Not that I didn't enjoy our solo chats, Walker and I, for the past year, which was very fun, but it's always nice to have a different perspective. Thank you for coming back. Any closing comments you want to leave the people with?
I'm so glad to be back, y'all. It's gonna be a really good year. I'm actually so excited. This was so much fun. We did the one episode that just was kind of like just the front part of this episode and stuff like that between the three of us, and that was already a ton of fun. I love the retreat. I love going to TAPPS. This has been a part of my life, and it's part of the reason. I'm just gonna say this. It's part of the reason why I got my new job. If I'm being honest, I'm really just thankful for everything that has happened so far, and I just want to say thank you to all the people out there that have reached out and stuff like that as well. I appreciate everything. This has been a family for sure, and I'm glad to be back.
I don't know if I could put it any other way. That is stated beautifully. I will say, just kind of an insight in my own psyche. I'll keep it brief because we do need to get out of here. I kind of, I'm working 9 to 5 now. I was thinking kind of even yesterday and early in the day, I was like, shoot, man, I've got like 4 hours of time to myself when I get home. I don't know if I want to get home and record a 3-hour TAPPS Division I preview. And I hopped on, we started talking, and I was like, I am so dadgum excited for this football season, dude. I'm just talking through this makes me really, really excited. I've said it to my family and my friends. Doing this gives me life, and we all enjoy what we do. And it's why we've done it for so long, and we'll continue to do it into the foreseeable future. But barring any closing comments from anyone else, I think that's a great place to end it. As always, I have been 1/3 of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson. Walker Lott and Ryan Schroeder have fantastically joined me for this episode. We will see you in the next one, the TAPPS D2 preview coming shortly. See you later.